Today's class is going to be a shoulders class. You will need a block, probably only one, maybe two. You will probably need a towel, and you can roll up a towel if that makes sense for you. One of the poses that we're going to be doing is putting a block underneath your armpit. And when you do that, if you've had surgery on your chest, that can be really challenging because there's so much pressure there. So you can do it a couple of different ways. One would be to take a towel, just fold it over a few times, and then just drape it. And if that doesn't work for you, you can roll up a towel or maybe two of them to get it a little bit bigger. Then they'll be a lot softer. But the pose is going to be just laying down on your side with the block right in your armpit. And we still have a couple minutes to go, so you don't have to go running and try to get into the pose. But this would be one way to soften that block. The other would be to just use a rolled up towel, or maybe two, depending on how big and fluffy your towel is. But this shoulders class is near and dear to me because, as most of you know, I've had problems with my right shoulder for the last 5 years. And I've been meeting with a couple of physiologists and a physical therapist as part of this program that I was doing for the last 12 weeks with Aviv, hyperbaric oxygen systems in Brownwood. If you're interested in hearing more about that, I'll talk after class. But anyway, today the shoulders is going to be the target. And the shoulder, your shoulder is the most flexible joint you have in your body. When people get a shoulder injury, everybody talks about the rotator cuff. And there are 5 main muscles that keep your shoulder stable. But in reality, there's more than twice as many. And it's because the joint is so flexible that it needs a lot more attachment. Otherwise, it can take off on you and cause problems. If you don't utilize your shoulder properly, you can get an injury and not even know it. I discovered that my right scapula was not pressed down onto my rib cage the way it was supposed to be. And that was due to some injury that I had. And so I've been gaining muscles in my serratus and in other areas. So this class is to focus on the shoulders. And I'm muting some people here. Okay, I think I have everybody muted. And just in time. My name is Clint, and this is Yin Yoga. And today is going to be a shoulders class. You're going to need a block and probably a towel, one that you can either roll up or just fold over. In the first pose, there's not going to be a meditation because this class is going to consume the entire 90 minutes, or 60 minutes, excuse me. But what I'd like you to do is come onto your right side, stretch out, kind of like when you were a kid watching Rama of the Jungle on Saturday mornings. If you were like me, that's what you were doing, followed up by Tarzan. But you can bend your knees if you want, but the first pose is going to be taking your block and inserting it right in the middle of your armpit. So the vertical side, try to get the block second height. If that's too high for you, obviously put it over onto the 4-inch side. But try to get the top of the block, the one that's closest to your elbow, right in the center of your armpit. And that will put the bottom corner of the block right on your serratus muscles, those muscles that tie your shoulder blade into your front ribs. Those are the muscles that allow you to bring your elbow forward and your arm forward. But from here, if you have a tender spot, you can always roll back a little bit or come forward a little bit more. It doesn't matter exactly where you are. What you're trying to do is stimulate those muscles that are really difficult to get to, but to stimulate them and get them to respond and start to soften. So from here, you can allow your eyes to close. Maybe take a deep cleansing breath in through your nose and exhale it out through your nose. And then just sink in. Let your side body just drape towards the floor. If you find that you're getting pinched and you want to move your hips a little bit farther away or a little bit closer, go ahead. You've been here longer than you think you have been. But just another 30 seconds or so. And there's a second positioning here. Now, if this is really bothering your chest because you've had surgery, I'm just repeating this from before the class started, you can always roll up a towel and use the towel as a softer version of the block. Now, deepen your breath. And then on your next inhale, lift up just a little bit and move that block closer towards your elbow so that the bottom of the block now is at the center of your shoulder, of your armpit. So this may allow your rib cage to come down onto the mat. Maybe not. But what this is doing, this is creating a little bit more space. It's kind of like a prying action, pushing your humerus, your upper arm bone, a little bit farther away from your scapula. And your scapula includes both the shoulder blade and the actual shoulder socket, called the acromion process. So again, just soften your body, soften your chest. This is actually working a little bit as a side bend, but it's also waking up those muscles, stretching your fascia. And something I've learned in the last week is that your fascia gets scar tissue. So if you hurt yourself or you're using your muscles in unusual ways, your fascia can get little ripples, or they get little peaks or knots. And what that does, that impedes your movement. And there is a way to reduce that, and that's by rubbing it out. I've been the victim of this gua sha process. It's an ancient Chinese version, but it helps smooth out the scar tissue so that your fascia lays flatter. Begin to deepen your breath. And on your next inhale, lift up again, remove the block, set it aside, and then just find your way onto your back. Your legs can be out straight, they can be bent, doesn't really matter. But just allow your arms to come up from your side and see if you can detect the difference between your right rib cage and your left, your right armpit and your left. I'll try to call your attention to this after every pose. And maybe you can see or feel the change little by little. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next inhale, walk your feet up towards your sit bones. Give yourself a squeeze. Rock a couple of times, right to left. Then come all the way over onto your right side. And come up into table. So your hands are directly below your shoulders. Your knees are directly below your hips. Do a couple of cat-cows here. Just preparing. And then look straight down. So your eyeballs are looking pretty much at the tops of your fingertips, but in between. And this is going to be puppy dog, so also known as bleeding heart. But begin to walk your hands forward, but just lower your head to where your eyes were before. Keeping your knees where they are, keeping your hips where they are, and you end up with a bit of a sway back that opens up your shoulders. Maybe walk your hands back an inch or two so that your hips are just a little bit less than 90 degrees. Maybe your head can rest on the mat, maybe not. You can always use a towel or a block. And then walk your hands over to the left side of your mat, maybe off the mat, and then lower back down. So this is a side bend in puppy dog, and feel how it's stretching open your right side body, and in particular your right shoulder. You can probably feel your serratus muscles pulling, trying to get your ribs a little bit closer to that right shoulder, because that's what you're stretching. Across your back, your rhomboids are stretched, pulling from close to your spine up to your shoulders. Just breathe into this. Maybe your forearms soften and drop down towards the mat. You can always bend your elbows. Here you're stretching the range of motion of your humerus in that shoulder socket. And you're stretching the muscles of your rotator cuff. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next inhale, walk your hands back. Come forward into table again and do a couple of cat-cows here. And the next time you come to center, pause. From here, I'd like you to begin to just walk your knees back and come down onto your belly like you're coming into Sphinx. So have a block handy in front of you. Put it maybe the medium direction, right underneath your forehead. From here, start with your hands flat on the mat. Bend your left elbow and bring that left hand behind your right elbow. Now bend your right elbow. We're coming into shoelace for your arms. And then from here, slowly move your right arm to the left and your left arm to the right. And maybe you can get your elbows right in line, and maybe not quite. Bring your palms vertical so that your palms are facing upwards. And from here, just release the pressure that your arms are giving, trying to keep your chest up. What you're trying to do here is stretch your shoulder blades out of as far apart as they can possibly be. And your hands are going in opposite directions. Just allow your head to fall forward. Now your legs can be anywhere. If it's more comfortable to leave, widen up your feet, go right ahead. What is going on? Try softening your core, your abdomen. Maybe your forehead has come down to the block, maybe not. It's been about 8 or 9 weeks since you've last been in a shoulders class and done this pose. So it's probably too long ago for you to remember. As with all yin poses, you want to stretch into it and then just let your body soften and allow time to occur so that the tension gets moved from your muscles into your fascia, stimulating your fascia so it grows a little bit longer, it stretches. And when that happens, you gain more mobility, more flexibility. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next inhale, lift your head up. And to free yourself from this ridiculous position that you've put yourself into, lean one direction and maybe move that elbow an eighth of an inch, then lean the other direction and just moving a tiny bit. You don't want to come out of this too fast because your muscles have been so stretched. And when you can finally move your arms, find a way onto your back. You can take one arm or the other out in front, and then just roll over onto your back. Come into Shavasana. Your knees can be bent, they can be straight, but allow your arms to come out a little bit wider and feel the difference between your left arm and your right arm. Most people, after this first side, your right arm has been receiving the most amount of tension. But some of you may have more in the left. But don't worry, you'll get another chance at the other side. Begin to deepen your breath. The next pose is going to be Gomukhasana arms. So to get there, just bend your knees and then walk your knees up towards your sit bones. Carefully bring your arms together, or hands together at your chest, and roll onto your left side. Now, make your way towards the edge of the mat in front of you, because you'll end up here with your arms, your right hand behind you. So from here, maybe use your left hand as a pillow. Take your right arm from straight out, up into the air. And as it's up in the air, turn your palm to the back so your thumb is pointing towards your feet. Now bend that elbow and bring the back of your right hand to the back, to your back. And then maybe try walking your hand up your spine just a little bit. Your next move here is going to be bending your right foot so that you're using that right foot as a kickstand to make sure that you don't roll onto your back too quickly. And from here, just begin to carefully, slowly roll back, trapping that right hand underneath your chest. And only you know how intense it is. If it's too intense, back up and move that hand closer to your hips. And if you're not getting enough, maybe back up and then move that hand closer to your shoulders. And once you're on your back, use your left forearm as a pillow. And just let your body weight do the work. Your shoulder may feel a little jumpy. You may feel it pulsing. That's not unusual when you get yourself into a different position. Use your feet to either intensify this or modify it, get it a little bit less intense. You do that by walking your feet up towards your sit bones or farther away. You have about 4 more breaths here. And then listen carefully. On your next inhale, bring that right foot back up towards your right hip, a little bit off to the right. And then slowly start to turn back onto your left side. And before you move that right arm, make sure it's completely free, and then just bring that hand up onto your right hip and just let it sit there for a moment. Allowing the blood to start coming back. And then this time, roll all the way back down onto your back. And coming back into Shavasana. Bring both arms out fairly wide, but whatever works best for you. And again, your knees can be bent or straight. And notice how different your right shoulder and arm feel from your left. Breathe into wherever those sensations are greatest. Your blood is bringing more oxygen to those cells that were stretched and stressed. And then bend your knees, walk your feet up towards your sit bones. Draw your knees into your chest. Give yourself a squeeze. And rock from left to right. And then come all the way over onto your right side again. And push your way up into table. I'm turning around so that you can see the block a little bit easier, but you don't have, you can keep this front part of your mat where it was. Do some cat-cows here, so it'll feel really good on your shoulders. And the next time you come to center, begin to come down onto your left side, laying back out like Cleopatra again. Grab your block, lift up, put that block, the medium dimension, underneath your left armpit, and come down. And again, you have all the options that you had before. Sometimes it's nice if you can just lean back and feel this a little bit different. If you have a little bit of a sore spot, that may be all you need to relieve that extra pressure. Your head only weighs about 13 pounds, so don't be lifting up 50 pounds of your chest to take the weight off your shoulder. You want the weight in your shoulder, down into those serratus muscles. You're actually giving your intercostal muscles a bit of a stretch here too. Those are the muscles that hold your ribs together. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next inhale, lift up just a bit. Move that block 4 inches towards your elbow, or the dimension of your block towards your elbow, and then come back down. The lower part of the block, the part closest to your hip now, is right at the center of your armpit. And this is a nice place to be. Maybe lean back. You can feel how your back picks up the tension. If that feels good to you, stay there. Experiment in every pose. Your right hand now is just resting on your hip, or it could be on the mat in front of you. Really, just whatever brings the most amount of calmness to you. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next inhale, lift up just enough to get the block out. Set the block aside. Come down onto your back. And again, come into Shavasana. with your arms out. You can have your arms all the way out in T if that feels good. If you're practicing on a tile floor, that your mat's on, the tile feels nice and cool. Notice how the front of your shoulder feels. Use your breath to bring comfort to whatever body part is feeling the most. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next inhale, walk your feet up towards your sit bones. Draw your knees into your chest. Give yourself a squeeze. Rock from left to right. And going all the way onto your right side. Come back up into table, facing the front of your mat. And do a couple of cat-cows here. And the next time you come to center, pause. From here, your toenails should be down on the mat. And then look between your hands, and that's where your eyeballs are going. And on your next exhale, begin to walk your hands forward, lowering your head down towards the mat, keeping your hips vertical or close to it. Maybe your head doesn't come all the way down, but use a towel to raise the floor. And then from here, come up on your tippy fingers and walk your hands off to the right side of your mat. You can move your head support over so that you can feel this in your left side body and in your left armpit. And then exhale back down. Your hips can be pulled back a little bit. And then just let your arms go. Release any tension in your arms. Maybe there's resistance from your mat to keep your arms from sliding. That's okay. But if it's too uncomfortable, move your arms just a little bit. You still want to keep that tension, particularly in your left side. In this left side bend. Can you feel the difference in your left rib cage? Begin to deepen your breath. On your next inhale, begin to walk your hands back towards your body and come up into the table. Come back to center and do a couple more cat-cows here. You may want to linger in cat or linger in cow. Do what your body wants. The next pose is arm shoelace with your left arm in front. So grab your block and place that on the mat in front of you. And then walk your knees back, your hands forward, and come into a Sphinx pose. Your elbows are directly underneath your shoulders. Your palms are flat. Maybe rock your hips from left to right to settle down the tension. This time, bend your right arm. Bring your right hand behind your left elbow. And then bend your left elbow. Bring your left hand in front of your right elbow. And from here, begin to walk your hands in opposite directions, bringing your elbows to your body center line, or maybe beyond, or maybe not anywhere close. If this is really challenging for your chest, you can always move your arms a little bit down towards your hips. That will lessen this intensity. You can always move your arms closer up towards your chin, and it will intensify this. And if it's just too much, you can always straighten out one or the other arms straight out in front of you. Sometimes it's good to take a deep cleansing breath in order to soften your body. Those cleansing breaths immediately reduce your blood pressure, slows your heart rate, and brings calmness to your whole body. It invokes your parasympathetic nervous system. That nervous system that controls the gentle side of life, your sleep habits. Allow your head just to drop forward. There's nothing to see in front of you. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next inhale, lift your head up slowly. And then again, to get out of this, lean to your left or right. Move that arm just a little bit. Go in the opposite direction. And slowly give your arms enough space to move. And when you're ready, roll down onto your back. With your arms out by your side. Notice the difference between your left arm and right. Breathe into wherever you need the most help. This may have been a very easy pose for you. Or it could have been very challenging. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next inhale, slowly roll over onto your right side. And come close to the left side of your mat. Use your right arm as a pillow. You can bend your knees. Move any blocks that might still be in the way. And from here, lift your left hand up towards the ceiling, really stretching that arm up, and then rotate your palm to face behind you. Your thumb is pointed towards your feet. And then on an exhale, bend that elbow, left elbow, and bring the back of your left hand to the middle of your back. Maybe you can walk that hand up a little ways. But remember, you're not trying to hurt yourself. You're trying to gain a meaningful stretch. So from here, bend your left knee. Place your left foot on the mat behind you to keep you from rolling over too quickly. And then slowly roll onto your back, trapping your left arm. And if it gets too much, back up right away. If it's not enough, move that hand a little bit closer to your shoulders. Bring the right hand and forearm behind your head and use them as a pillow. If there's any tension remaining in your arm, try to soften. You may feel the points of your shoulder blades digging into the mat. Try to soften your shoulders. You can use your feet To modify this pose, you can roll your knees one direction or the other to put a little bit more weight onto that arm, or a little bit less if you roll your knees to the right. Begin to deepen your breath. Bend your knees, walk them back up towards your sit bones. Move your left foot out to the left a little bit. And then slowly turn back onto your right side. Freeing up that left hand. But just move that hand enough to rest on that left hip. Maybe you can feel the blood coursing through your shoulder, your upper arm, your forearm. As more oxygen is coming back into your tissues. And whenever it feels best for you, just roll back onto your back in Shavasana. And again, feel the difference in your arms, in your shoulders. Begin to deepen your breath. Locate a block. And then bend your knees, walk your feet up towards your sit bones. Have that block in your hands. And then take the block, the medium height, and bring it off to the right in line with your shoulder, so that your arm, when it's stretched out, will hit just about the middle of your forearm, maybe even closer to your elbow. And then from here, bring your arm back next to your side and roll to the left into fetal position. Bring both arms out wide in front so that your palms are together, your knees are together. And then raise that right arm up overhead. And then just begin to lower it down over on the other side of your body. And if you planned it right, your arm will come down on that block and just stay right there. You're not all the way down, but feel that little bit of opening in your shoulder. Your arm's not quite cantilevered. It's getting a little bit of support. But you can feel your armpit as it's being opened up again. This time it's more of your pecs that are being engaged. Maybe you can feel this all the way down towards your back. Now your gaze can be off to the side, over your right fingers, or if your neck doesn't work that way, you can be looking up or looking over at your left hand. this spinal twist is more in your thoracic spine, where your ribs are, because your knees are probably still down. In most spinal twists, your lumbar spine is doing all the heavy lifting. That's because it's much more flexible. But your thoracic spine has all these ribs attached, giving it added stability. And with that stability comes stiffness. So poses like this that target twisting your thoracic spine are really helpful. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next exhale, just roll all the way onto your back. Bring your knees into your chest. Give yourself a squeeze. Push your hips away. Push your shoulders away. And rock from left to right. Now get that block and put it out where your left arm will reach. Again, roughly at your forearm. And then from here, just roll all the way over to the right side in fetal position. Your knees are together, your legs are bent, your knees are up. Bring both hands out long in front of you, palm to palm. And then on an inhale, raise the left arm up towards the ceiling. And then slowly it descends as you open up your chest. And again, if you've done your placement properly, you don't have to move. Your arm is just supported. Now, if you let that arm go all the way down, you'll get a little bit more twist in your spine, but you won't get quite as much shoulder action. And since this is a shoulders class, that's why I had you use the block. Maybe you can feel the front of your left shoulder. Maybe you can free up that left hand and just reach all the way from your shoulder, your collarbone. You can feel all the tense muscles or the stretched muscles. They're not tense. You can feel the fibers. And if your arm can come down to your serratus, you can feel those too. And then soften your belly. Soften your glutes. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next inhale, just roll onto your back. Bend your knees. Bring your knees up into your chest and give yourself a squeeze. Get rid of your blocks. Maybe make circles with your knees on the ceiling. Really big ones so that your shoulders get extended as your knees come forward. And then the opposite direction. And the next time you come to center, pause. From here, release one knee and that foot to the front of the mat, and then the other knee and the other foot. Raise your arms up overhead, and then just stretch from your toenails to your fingernails, your palms to your heels, and then return your arms back down by your side, back into Shavasana. From here, you can rock your hips a little bit left to right to find the perfect spot for your sacrum. You can walk your shoulder blades underneath your chest, bringing your palms out to the side a bit with your palms towards the ceiling. Or maybe your arms just want to be straight out to the side, like the Da Vinci Man. Allow your eyes to close. Take a deep cleansing breath in through your nose. And let it all out through your nose. Take another deep cleansing breath in through your nose. Let it out through your nose. And take rest. Begin to deepen your breath. Bring your awareness back into your space. Bring movement to your fingers and to your toes, to your wrists and to your ankles. Gently roll your head from left to right. And then bend your knees, walking your feet towards your sit bones. Draw your knees into your chest. Give yourself a squeeze. Rock from left to right. And then come all the way over onto your right side and pause there for just a moment. And notice what it feels like. Notice the difference in your shoulders. And then using your left hand, push the floor away and rise up to a seated position. Thank you for sharing your yoga with me this afternoon. Your presence gives me great motivation. And your practice gives you extra health and breath benefits and builds your compassion for others. Take your compassion and your empathy with you wherever you go and share it with your family, your friends, and each person you meet. Namaste. You may unmute yourselves. This is Clint, and this has been Yin Yoga.